Haudu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. So, I last week, a week ago, I used to constantly follow news around the United States of America. So there was a recent polling. It is a company called YouGov. So they did a polling in the United States, and they found like there are around 35 religions in the USA that's being followed within the country. And what they did was they did a rating among a group of people. It's like across different spectrum of the United States to see how they view a different religion. So they were saying they voted across two things, like, do you look at this religion favorably or unfavorably? So when the results of this survey came out, I looked at it. So there are like 35 religions, and they ordered it in such a way like the most favorable religion to the least favorable religion. So out of 35, when I looked at that results, we were at the bottom 7. From the bottom, we were at the 7th. So Islam was not a very favorable religion here. So now I'm thinking about it. So Islam has been there for a long time. I know we had the 9/11 attack going on in the United States, and I was thinking, well, what could be causing this unfavorability of Islam within the United States? Then one of the topic that came about was women. Like Islam and men do not treat or give the rights, like equal rights for women in Islam. So that's one of the reasons like people used to go around saying in the United States like Islam is not good for women. So what I thought was, okay, maybe this should be my next topic. I should talk about how does Islam and our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has told us how the women rights has to be handled as part of the religion, and I can go from there. So to start with that topic, the first thing that came up was, okay, in the eyes of Allah, how does He treat us? Does He treat women and men separately? No, He does not. So that's where I'm coming up with the Quran in the Surah 3, 195 in Ayah. So He's saying like, I never fail to reward any worker among you for any work you do, be you male or female, you are equal to one another. So through this verse, we can clearly see Allah doesn't differentiate between men and women. As long as you follow the right deeds of Islam and you're doing the righteous work, you get the benefit for it. So in the afterlife, all the benefits doesn't matter. You could be a man or woman. Allah, in His eyes, you are equal before Allah at the time of Judgment Day. So when you look at this verse, it comes in different places in Quran, different ayahs and verses. Allah keeps on saying, you can be men or women, it doesn't matter in the eyes of me. You still remain the same, whatever you do, the good deeds and bad deeds. Not only the good deeds, even the bad deeds, it doesn't matter, you have to be men or women. At the end of the day, the judgment is equal for both men and women. And with these lines, let's start with, okay, how Islam teaches talks about women's rights across all the stages of women, right? Let's start with the first thing, which is the birth of a female child. So before a time of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they were like pagans in Arabs, right? So they were killing female infants. So there were two reasons mostly. One of the reason was poverty. Look at Quran, it clearly says, kill not your children on a plea of want. And also it goes around saying, take not life which Allah has made sacred. So He says like it's a life, the sacred life that Allah has given to the child. It doesn't matter if it's a girl or a boy, we do not have the right to take the life. And He specifically in the Quran it says like, don't take it for the reason of poverty. So you might think like Allah is going to provide sustenance. He says, I would provide the sustenance for each and every child. It doesn't matter, it could be a boy or a girl. And one more reason, if you look into it, why people were not happy with female children is like, they thought it's a shame. So they think like if they have a female baby, it's a shameful thing. And if you look at Quran, it specifically says, you should not be shameful for having a female child. And it also says that thinking of them as a shameful thing, it's an evil sin. So if you go around thinking about this, this is before the time, right, when people are talking about it. Islam is coming, even before the Prophet. Quran has led these guidelines very clearly. Don't kill your children, doesn't matter if it's boy or a girl, and don't kill them saying that because of poverty or because you are shameful of them. And even if you go to the Hadith, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he clearly says, Allah has forbidden you. He talks about 4 things, and one of the things is to bury your daughters alive. So you're seeing in Quran that Allah is forbidding it, and you also see our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam specifically forbidding you to kill your children, and also he's saying like to bury your daughters alive is a great sin. So now you're thinking a girl is born, right? And then you have to, as a parents, when you have children, so Allah is saying it doesn't matter if you have a girl child or a boy, you have to treat them equally. If you have to buy gifts, buy gifts for both of them. So that's one more thing. It doesn't matter it's a boy or a girl, treat them equally. So you see this instances where Quran and our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is clearly telling each and every one, treat your kids equally, doesn't matter girl or boy. Always, and also he's telling us clearly, don't kill your children, because it keeps repeating in different places in Quran. Do not kill your children for poverty or because of you're feeling shameful about it. And then now you're taking care of your children, right? So this is it's a very good hadith that I saw in Sahih al-Bukhari 5995. So at this time, Prophet is not at home. So Prophet's wife Aisha is at home. A woman comes. She has 2 daughters. She comes in and asks. She's asking for help. So for something to eat. So at that time, there is only dates at home. So our Prophet's wife Aisha, she gives the dates to that lady. So that lady takes the dates and she breaks it into half and gives one half to one of his daughter and the other half to the other daughter. So she did not eat it. So she gave it to her daughter and then went away. Then when Prophet comes back home, Aisha is telling her that this lady came for, she had a daughter, she came in, I gave her the date, she distributed it equally. So you know what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says right away? Whoever is in charge of these daughters and treats them generously, they will act as a shield for him from the hellfire. So you can see here, if you're taking care of children, especially female daughters, they are going to help you from hellfire. So it doesn't say even though you're treating them equally, your boy and your girl equally, but if you have girl children and you're treating them with the right manner, bringing up in the right Islamic ways, you want to get the benefits as parents. So you can see here, the Prophet is specifically saying you have daughters, right? So he doesn't say, it's one of those times when all these female infanticide and everything is happening. Through his teachings, he is putting forth all these ideologies of Islam, which is always giving you equal rights and sometimes more rights to women. So now you have a baby, you are bringing up your baby very well, you have a daughter. Next step is education, right? And Quran specifically says everywhere, educate your children, not only in the Islamic world and also in the world affairs. You have to educate them equally in both the affairs. First, you try to give them the Islamic education, also the education of the world. And Allah doesn't say, give education to your boy child or don't give education to your girl child. He says, you have to give education to your children, irrespective of their gender. So again, there is one more instance where even our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, seeking knowledge is compulsory for every Muslim. He doesn't say it's compulsory for a boy, it's compulsory for a girl. Every Muslim, irrespective of a girl or a boy. So all these instances, you see clear examples from the Quran and also from the Hadith that there is no gender disparity between a boy or a girl. And then, as an example of education, let's take our Prophet's wife Aisha. So if Aisha, she is one of the greatest scholars, because after our Prophet ﷺ passed away, she was one of those great scholars who passed down those information, lots of hadiths and also the information about the Prophet to the next generation. So she was one of the greatest scholars. She has personally taught lots of teachings about Allah and Islam to the wife, and wife in turn, she is sharing it to the world. And we also know Aisha was also had lots of knowledge in medicine. She helped with lots of treatments also people who were sick. And this is one more interesting thing. So there's a Muslim alim. He was in Egypt. His name is Muhammad Akram Nadwi. What he did was he did a research. He did a research like, okay, we talk about his scholars. Were there any women scholars in Islam? So he did a research and went back to, I think he did research for like 4 to 5 years. He also wrote a book about it. It's in Amazon. I'll share the details about you later. So he found 800 women scholars that went back up to 1400 years in Islam. They were teaching Hadith. They were spreading the message of Islam. They also helped in lots of Islamic laws by treating as jurists. So so you see all these clear examples right from our Prophet's time up to these days. All our female scholars have been there. So if someone says no, you don't allow women. So for example, in Iran, in Afghanistan, the Taliban who are ruling now in control of Afghanistan, they have restricted education for women. Islam doesn't say it. So what the Taliban are doing is not Islam, but the Western world sees that as an example and say, see, you don't even educate your women. That's absolutely incorrect. Islam never said don't educate your women. It encourages of education of women. We have women scholars across everywhere. And we also see in lots of hadiths, like our Prophet is preaching, yet lots of men around it. It was not intentionally, the Prophet didn't want to teach to women, but all of his gatherings, it was always taken care, lots of people were from the men. So what happened was, one time, a few women went to the Prophet ﷺ and asked the Prophet, like, oh Prophet, it seems every time preaching, there are lots of men. Can you have separate preaching sessions for us women? And he said, yes, I will do it. And he had specific sessions for women also. So you clearly see here, our Prophet is teaching women, he's encouraging women to have education, he's encouraging everyone to proceed in towards knowledge, both Islamic and in the world also. And not only that, and there's hadith where the Prophet says, if someone has a slave, if it's a slave woman, at that time, we don't have slaves during this time. At that time, the slaves were a common thing during our prophecy. And says, if you have a slave woman and you treat her nicely, you teach her, you make sure he gets the knowledge, and you marry her, you get double the reward. So even though it doesn't say if you have a male slave, if you educate them, you get this benefit. There's a specific hadith, you says that if you're educating, even if a slave, a woman, if you're educating her and you're freeing her from a slavery, and you marry her, you're going to get the reward, double the reward. This comes from Sahih al-Bukhari. So now you have a female daughter, she is born, you are bringing her nicely equally with all the Islamic practices. Now you are giving her the knowledge about Islamic and the world affairs. Next term is work, right? There are lots of misconceptions, like we Muslims don't allow women to work. That's not true at all. We see lots of, Islam doesn't forbid us saying, this woman should not be working, you should not work, you should be stay at home and take care of your husband and children. It's not like Islam doesn't say that women should, you have to take care of your family and help with your family. That's not, but if you want to work, you can work in addition to taking care of your family. And if you are married, you have to make sure you get permission for your husband before you work. So you see these instances where not the Prophet, nor the Quran is specifically forbidding women to work. So it's just the misconceptions around the Western world, or people who don't want to learn about Islam, they keep spreading these falsehoods. And our Prophet's wife, Khadija radiallahu, she was a wealthy tradeswoman in Mecca. Her father was a big tradesman, and what he did was, after her father passed away, she took a father's business and she ran it. And what she did was, she spent lots of the money in Allah's way. And also there is Prophet's one more wife, Zainab. She used to do leather work, and what she do is, she used to make leather goods and she used to go to the market and sell them. Nobody says. So women, even during the time of Prophet ﷺ, you are seeing all these instances where they were working and they were also helping the family and taking care of the family and making sure all these financial help is also being done. So now this takes to the financial rights, right? Now women is working, now they are earning money. Islam clearly says they can keep their money. As long as if they are willing to give it to your husband or your mom, so they don't have to share it. Islam doesn't say whatever money the women earn, she has to share it with their family. It's at a complete will. Can you tell me one religion which says this? that this particular money is for you, you should not spend to anyone. At least for men, if we have money, we have to take care of our parents, take care of our family, our wife, feed our children. That's an obligation in Islam. But in women, it's not an obligation to spend the money that she has. It could be anything. For example, let's say you are marrying a woman, and women already has some gifts or some inheritance. She has a property. Even though as long as she is not ready to share it with you, it still stays with the women. So Islam has said it's absolutely legal to do it, and Islam is allowing you to do that. And there is no financial responsibility that's been asked from women. Men has lots of financial responsibility, but Islam doesn't give any financial responsibility to women. And let's go back to inheritance. At the time of Prophet and time of Quran, when Islam was coming up, even in Europe, we say the so-called this most advanced Western world, they didn't give inheritance to women. Women got inheritance at a very late stage. But Islam, through Quran, we are giving inheritance to women. And some people come back and say, oh, Quran says men gets more than women. Yes, but men also, like women gets lots of advantages, like whatever money they get as gift, their mahar and everything, it's on them. They don't have any financial responsibilities. Men have more financial responsibilities. That's why they get more share. So again, if someone comes back and says, no, you should be getting equal share, but women doesn't have financial responsibility. Men have all the financial, so they get more share during inheritance. And also, if you have a deceased relative, at that time, there were like women, they didn't even get their share even if they are eligible, even if their parents are alive. But once people are passed away, like from relatives, their share used to go to women also, like mother, sister, wife. So Islam has set all these principles and guidelines which make sure women is included in every part of inheritance. No other religion does that. They cannot come back and say we don't give them the right equal shares in inheritance. We are giving them. We are giving more than they're supposed to get when they, in terms of financial responsibility. Now, when they are working, now comes the next stage of marriage. So, again, in Islam clearly says before a marriage, and women also has to give consent. You cannot force your daughter or someone into a marriage, or a woman. So there is a clear guidelines on getting consent and permissions from a woman before they can be married to any man. Again, Islam says that it's not like it's not something being forced on. It's not a cultural practice. It's part of our Islamic guidelines to do that. And you talk about prenuptial agreement. What is this prenuptial agreement? It's like some fancy thing this Hollywood movie actors do because they have rich people. Once they get married, once they get divorced, their money needs to be shared. Let's go back 1400 years ago. Quran has we have lots of examples to say from Prophet is saying like women can write prenuptial agreement. They can write a marriage contract and say how much of things needs to be shared and what types of responsibility needs to be taken. The women can write marriage contracts. It's perfectly legal. It's allowed in Islam. Now, prenuptial agreement is a fancy thing in the Western world, but Islam has brought this thousands of years ago. So can someone say Islam doesn't know? Now only men can write it? Women can write it. It specifically says about this agreement. And also when in the marriage, women doesn't have to give anything, no dowry or anything like that. But the men has to give mahar. Again, if the women says I don't need mahar, then it's okay. But again, the Islam clearly says women doesn't have to give dowry or anything to get married. So you see all these progressive ideas, Western philosophies, these which have been, people think like Islam doesn't do it. Islam did it thousands of years ago. A prophet has been saying about this a while ago. And people come back and say, oh, Islam allows polygamy. Polygamy, like a man can wed more than one or two women. So if you go back to the history, right, and somebody comes and says, so you can have lots of wives. Yeah, Quran says that, but you have to look into the context behind it. So during at that time when the Islamic wars were having, there are lots of orphans because the men were going into war, and when the men passed away during the war, then the midst of lots of orphans and women left alone. So to take care of these families, Prophet ﷺ encouraged men to go and wed more than one wife. But again, Islam clearly says in the Quran, you have to treat each and every wife equally. If you cannot treat your wife equally, you cannot marry them. But again, this was A long time ago, when we had this problem of lots of orphans and women left alone because their husbands died in the war, Islamic wars. So it might have made sense, right? You don't want these people to be left alone. But now you don't see that happening. Nobody is going around having more than one or two wives. It's kind of whatever happened at that time, it had a valid logical reason. But people trying to turn it towards us and saying that, oh, Islam supports it. We support it, but you have to go back and look into the context. The context clearly says you cannot just go around and keep marrying every woman. You can see that that's not what Islam asks us to do. And I'm talking about the marriage agreement that women can write. They can also write an agreement, but if you cannot marry, marry another woman when if you are legally wed. That could be part of a marriage contract. People don't do that. We don't do lots of contracts, but it's permissible. Islam allows that. We have examples of that happening. So, my dear brothers and sisters, what I try to do with this specific speech is take all these examples. If someone from the Western world says you something about like women's rights, like we do not treat a women right, these are like nice examples in Quran and the lives of Prophet. I would also encourage you to look into it more, look into all the hadiths. I can provide examples of those after the speech is done. But for now, I will like to make a dua such that like everybody can understand Islam, follow Islam, and be good followers of Islam. Assalamu alaikum.